The town of Harrow Crossing had a gravedigger named Emmett Carr, and Emmett had noticed the orc woman long before anyone thought to ask him about her. She came to funerals, not every funeral, at first. A widow's burial in late autumn 3 years back, then a child lost to the river fever the following spring, then a farmer who had worked the same 40 acres for 50 years and gone peacefully in his sleep. She did not come to the church. She did not stand with the mourners at the graveside. She stood at the tree line, under the old cedar at the north edge of the hill, with her hands folded at her waist and her head bowed, and she stayed until the last family member had turned for home. Then she was simply gone. The town noticed. The town had opinions. Some of the opinions Emmett heard at the hardware counter or in passing on the road, and he did not share them. He had his own opinion, which was this: a person who walked 2 miles uphill to stand alone and mourn someone she had never met was not a person to be run off. So he did not run her off. He dug his graves and smoothed his mounds and stacked his tools, and sometimes, when the last mourner had gone, and the hill was empty, he would look toward the cedar, and she would look back, and that was all. It was a Thursday in November, frost in the ground, and a sky the color of old pewter, when Emmett finished filling in the grave of a retired schoolmaster and found that his thermos of tea had gone cold, and he was in no particular hurry. He looked at the cedar. She was there. He picked up his thermos and his folding stool, and he walked to the tree line. She did not move when he came. She was tall. She stood a full head above him, with green skin gone weathered and warm at the cheeks, gray-streaked black hair braided back from her face, and tusks that curved clean and pale. She wore a long dark coat and a length of cloth folded at her shoulder, worn thin with handling, in a deep amber brown that might once have been vivid. Her eyes, when they found his, were steady and dark and a little wary. Emmett set his stool in the grass beside her and sat down. "You come to all of them," he said. "Near enough." "Yes," she said. Her voice was low and careful. "I've got cold tea." He held up the thermos. "You're welcome to it. It's not much good to me now." She looked at the thermos for a moment. Then she sat down in the grass, cross-legged, settling her coat around her, and accepted the cup he poured. She held it in both hands without drinking, looking out over the hill at the turned earth and the stone markers and the cedar moving in the cold wind. "I never knew him," she said. "The schoolmaster." "Neither did I much," Emmett said. "I just put them in the ground. That's enough to come for." She drank the tea. He let the silence sit the way he had learned to let silences sit. His wife had taught him that years ago, and the grave hill had finished the lesson. "My name is Vara," she said when the cup was empty. "Emmett Carr," he said. "You live in the valley? I camp at the creek bend." 3 years now, near enough. He nodded. 3 years. That matched. "You've got family in the area?" Something crossed her face, not pain exactly, but the shape pain leaves behind when it has been sitting a long time. "My clan is 2 days' ride east. I parted from them on good terms. I needed to be somewhere quieter for a while." He understood that well enough. He didn't press it. The wind moved through the cedar above them, and she tilted her head back slightly, as though listening to it. "I'll bring 2 cups next time," Emmett said, standing in Folston's stool. Vara looked up at him. Something in her expression shifted, careful, still, but lighter. "All right," she said. She came to the shed 2 weeks later, which surprised him slightly, and then not at all. He had the wood stove going against the December cold, and she knocked at the open door and looked in. And he pulled a second chair from the corner without ceremony. They talked the way two people talk when they are both careful and both a little lonely, slowly, feeling out the edges of things. He told her about Nella, his wife who had died 4 years back of the summer fever, and how he had not left Harrow Crossing, partly because the leaving felt too large and partly because someone had to dig the graves, and he was already there. She told him about the mourning cloth on her shoulder, that it was her mother's work, that among her clan the mourning cloth was worn by the ones charged with singing the dead across. "Singing them across," Emmett said. "My people have songs for the dead." She turned the cup in her hands. "Not church hymns. Older than that. A keeper learns them from her teacher, who learned from hers. My mother was the keeper. She taught me all of them before she went." "Your clan, they still have someone for that work?" "They have me, when I go back for it." She paused. "I have been practicing out here, at the tree line. When there is a funeral." She said it plainly, without apology, but he heard the shape of it. The practice, yes, and also the need to be present, to let the songs go somewhere real and not just into the empty air of her campsite. "I wondered if you were singing," he said. "I couldn't hear from the grave, but your lips were moving." She looked at him steadily. "You watched that closely." "I watch everything on that hill," he said. "It's my hill near enough." The woodstove ticked. Outside, the first real snow of winter was beginning. "You never told me to leave," Vara said. "Why would I?" He meant it simply. and she heard it simply, and that was the moment the last of her wariness laid itself down. She came through the winter, not to every funeral. There were 3 more before the snow hardened, and she stood at the graveside for 2 of them, beside Emmett, not at the tree line. The town saw. The town had opinions again. Emmett did not share them, and Vara did not flinch from them. And eventually the opinions moved on to something easier to chew. She told him more about the songs. There were 7 of them, 1 for a long life, 1 for a short one for a child, 1 for a warrior, 1 for the beloved lost young. He did not ask her to sing them for him. It seemed a thing that should happen in its own time or not at all, and she did not offer. But she described them, and he listened the way he listened to everything on the hill, which was with his full and unhurried attention. The 1 for a long life, she said one evening, turning her cup, is not a sad song. Most people expect it to be sad. It isn't. It's almost wide. It has a lot of room in it. That seems right, Emmett said. The short life song is sadder, but it's not despairing. It's more like, here is the shape of what was. It deserves to be named. That also seems right. She looked at him across the shed. You are easy to talk to. I've had practice, he said. The dead are good listeners. You get used to speaking plainly. She almost smiled. It changed her face. The stern line of it softened, and he saw that she was not as old as he had first thought. Or perhaps that she had only looked older from a distance when she was guarding herself. I should have walked to that tree line 2 years ago, he said. I wouldn't have come to the shed if you had, she said. I needed you to wait. He thought about Nella, who had also needed him to wait, about certain things. Some people opened on their own schedule and not before, and the right thing was to be there when they did. Fair enough, he said. The first funeral of spring was for a woman named Doris Vane, 78 years old, who had run the dry goods store on Main Street for 50 years and outlasted 3 husbands and did not seem particularly sorry to go. The whole town came, or near enough that it felt like the whole town, and they packed the hillside in their dark coats, and Emmett had the grave ready well before the service began. Vara sat beside him on the low bench he'd set at the graveside. She had done this twice in winter, when the crowds were thin, but this was different. 30-some people, neighbors and shopkeepers and farmers, and several of them looking at her sidelong. She sat with her hands on her knees and her mourning cloth at her shoulder, and she looked straight ahead. The minister spoke. The family wept. An old man near the back had to be steadied by his son. When the minister finished and the silence opened up, that particular silence that sits between the last word and the first shovelful of earth, Vara drew a slow breath. She began to sing. It was the long life song. Emmett knew it must be from what she had told him. It had that quality she had described of wideness, of room. It was low at first, almost beneath hearing, and then it filled without effort, the way good sound fills a space, not by forcing, but by belonging. The words were in her clan's tongue, which none of them knew, and somehow that made it more rather than less. It was not a hymn. It was older than that. It was the shape of a life named and set free. No one moved. The old man near the back stopped needing to be steadied. He stood straight, instead, and his face changed. The song was perhaps 2 minutes long. When it ended, Vara folded her hands again and looked forward, and Emmett set the first shovelful of earth on Doris Vane's coffin. Afterward, when the crowd thinned, a woman came and stood in front of Vara, the eldest daughter, red-eyed, still clutching her handkerchief. She said nothing for a moment. Then she said, "What was it?" "The long life song," Vara said. "For those who lived well and fully and are ready, it is not a sad song." "No," the woman said. "It wasn't." She reached out and took Vara's hand, briefly, and then she walked back down the hill. Emmett poured tea from his thermos and handed Vara her cup. She accepted it. The cedar moved above them in the spring wind. Below, the town went about its business, which it would do today and tomorrow and for all the seasons to come. And on this hill, when the time came, there would be a gravedigger and a keeper of songs, and the dead would not go unaccompanied. "You'll come back in the fall," he said. It was not quite a question. "I'll come back before fall," Vara said. He nodded and drank his tea, and she drank hers, and the hill was quiet and full at the same time, which was exactly how Emmett Carr had always believed a place of rest should feel.